Hi, everyone. So I want to go through The Tides of Change, the short story that you just read, and give you some ideas of ways to think about theme in that story. That's our goal this week, is start thinking about theme in stories. So first, let's just review the story briefly together. There are two main characters that we see in the story. Marie is the focus of the story. She's 13 years old, and Evelyn, who's 8 years old, is her sister, her little sister. And the setting of our story is the beach in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, and it's summertime, and there are kids on the beach playing together. Now, there are two kinds of conflict in our story. And remember, we've talked about those kinds of conflict before. We can have internal conflicts and we can have external conflicts. So, one of the external conflicts, one of the physical things that happens in our story that Marie has to battle against is a person versus nature situation. Marie needs to save her little sister Evelyn from drowning in a riptide. The water becomes very quick and fast moving, and she needs to act to save Evelyn. She's also facing an internal conflict. So Marie is battling against some things inside of herself. And she's trying to help Evelyn and herself to deal with their mother's military deployment and navigate the emotions that are related to that. The mood of our story is anxiety, fear, worry, and concern. From the very beginning, we kind of see that develop through Marie's perspective. Now, at the end of the story, Marie has rescued her little sister from drowning, and that's really our resolution to the main conflict in the story. But at the end, Marie also starts to think about her mother's choices and why her mother has decided to serve in the military, to serve her country. And she thinks about that as her mother's way of saving other people. And so Marie, and also us as the reader, we come to realize that she's going to save her sister emotionally by helping her to navigate through the feelings that she has about her mother's deployment. When we think about point of view in our story, this can be really helpful to uncover a theme because an author's choosing a particular perspective to look at the story from, and that's going to uncover some of the important lessons or takeaways we're supposed to have from that story. So this story, like the fun they had, which we read last week, is also in a third person, limited, omniscient point of view. What that means is we're looking at the story through the eyes of Marie. We can see inside of her head, but our narrator is not in the story. The narrator is outside of the story, not a character, but can tell us what Marie's thinking and feeling. We know that this isn't an omniscient narrator because we can't see inside of everybody's head. We can only see inside Marie's head. There's no mention of Evelyn's thoughts, only her actions and her reactions, which means that this is a limited third person omniscient perspective. It's limited to Marie. And we know it isn't first person because Marie is not telling the story using an I voice. We hear her name mentioned and the narrator is clearly outside of her. So let's think about how that impacts the story. As a third person, omniscient, limited narrator, we have the opportunity to watch Marie grow and change and hear about what she's thinking and what she's feeling in the story. At the beginning of the story, Marie is afraid to discuss their mother's deployment with her sister, and she tries to distract her from being sad. She wants to go into the water to play together and try not to talk about it. Then, during the course of the story, Marie thinks about how she had nightmares after her mother's first deployment. And she realizes that her sister is going to experience similar issues if she doesn't do something to help her to address those feelings. She wants to keep her sister from experiencing similar pain and trauma, and we see that develop during the course of the story. And by the end of the story, Marie seems determined to help her sister to cope with the sadness and the fear that she's facing, just like she physically helped her in the riptide. Now, when we think about the deep meaning of this story, we could start to think about the riptide as a metaphor. Remember, a metaphor is a comparison, but it doesn't use like or as. So we could think about this riptide as a sudden, dangerous, upsetting situation that could have a tragic outcome. And for Marie and Evelyn, that sounds an awful lot like their mother's deployment. So those two things are being metaphorically compared. Okay? This represents the sudden news of their mother's deployment and the potential tragedy that could occur to her in the military. So that riptide is representing this sudden change in their lives. And Marie saving Evelyn in the riptide represents how Marie will emotionally support her sister through the difficult times that they're going to face together in the future. So the reader realizes that Marie will find a way to keep Evelyn emotionally safe, just as she's found a way to keep Evelyn physically safe in the story. So what realization does Marie have at the end of our story that's important? Well, when we get to that very last few paragraphs, Marie is thinking about why her mother chooses to serve in the military. She knows that her mother wants to help other people through her military service. And Marie decides that she's going to do something very similar, but she's going to do it for her little sister. She's going to dedicate herself to helping her little sister through all of the emotional issues and challenges that are going to occur because of her mother's absence. And she's going to try to protect Evelyn from all of the trauma and the uncertainty that she previously experienced at Evelyn's age going through the same situation. So if we think about the title of our story, there's a lot of clues here to the deep meaning of the story, and that's why titles can be so significant or important. The title of our story is The Tides of Change. Now, although the beach has literal tides, right? Water comes in and water comes out, and those tides have caused the riptide that Marie and Evelyn are caught in, we can also think about this, again, as a metaphor, right? Life has tides. Things come and go in life. So this title represents that sudden dramatic change that's happening for these girls as their mother is planning to go back into the military. A lot of things are happening that are changing. But this is a temporary change, like the movement of the tides, right? This isn't forever. This is something that's a tide that's sweeping in that will sweep back out again. And this also shows us that importance of the riptide, right? How that is a very deep, significant metaphor in the story. Because if the story is all about tides and things changing, the riptide is a sudden change, but it fades away also fairly suddenly. So as we dig deep into the story, if we think about that whole aspect of the title and the change, and we think about the choices that Marie is making for her family, it seems like the main theme of this story deals with family, with the importance of family support, particularly in times of trouble and change. Notice how I didn't reduce this down to one word, family. It's more complicated than that. Theme is usually a statement, a more complicated, a more specific kind of statement about the story than just one word. So I would say, if I was summing up the story, that it deals with the importance of family support in times of trouble and change. The author's message is one of comfort. Marie decides that she is going to support Evelyn, and that reminds her of her mother's commitment to serving others in the armed forces, and she's almost decided to be mothering, in a sense, to Evelyn. Marie is also, at the very end of the story, talking about how she will teach Evelyn to learn how to swim. And again, we could think about that metaphorically. Even though she's literally talking about helping her learn the strokes so that she can, float better and be more buoyant and maybe not get caught in a riptide, we can also think about this as a metaphor for her helping her to develop stronger coping mechanisms emotionally during this time away from their mother. The bond of these two sisters shows the importance of family connections at times when things are changing in life. And that's one of the deep, crucial takeaways in this story. I hope that this helps you to better understand the ways to unlock theme. I've linked this slideshow for you so that you can use it to help you as you're working. Feel free to reach out, though, if you have any questions. And I'm always here to help. Have a great day, guys.